The story begins in a pawn shop that appears completely empty except for a rat sitting on one of the shelves. A pilot named Petey Shelburne rushes in, clearly terrified, clutching a toy monkey. He frantically rings the bell on the counter until the shop owner finally appears. The owner notices that Petey's uniform is covered in blood, but Petey calmly explains that it isn't his. A sign on the wall says the shop doesn't accept returned toys, but Petey insists this isn't just a toy. He says whoever made it must have been insane, warning that no one should ever let the monkey hit its drum under any circumstances. Moments later, the very thing Petey feared happens. The toy comes to life, causing him to stumble backward in terror, while the shop owner insists nothing is happening. At that exact moment, the rat finishes chewing through a string, triggering a chain reaction that ends with a spear impaling the shop owner. The monkey then beats its drum again, reversing the mechanism and pulling the man's intestines along with the string. Desperate, Petey grabs a blowtorch from the display and melts the monkey while screaming words of hatred at it. Petey never returns home, leaving his wife, Lois, convinced that he abandoned the family. Their twin sons, Hal and Bill, grow up believing the same story. Lois tells them that their inheritance will be the old closet filled with all the junk and souvenirs Petey collected during his flights. The twins decide to explore the stored belongings and eventually discover the monkey attached to a box with a message that reads, "Turn the key and see what happens." Hal is afraid to mess with his father's things, but Bill insists that, as the older brother, he has the right to decide. As soon as he turns the key, the monkey begins moving in stiff, jerky motions before freezing, its drumstick failing to strike the drum properly. Bill quickly loses interest and heads to his room with a deck of adult playing cards. Later, Lois leaves the boys with her babysitter, Annie, while she goes out on a date. Hal is surprised to spot the monkey sitting in the back seat of the car but says nothing, while Bill is more interested in flirting with Annie. The three of them head to a Japanese restaurant, where the sushi chef also seems attracted to her. While they're inside, the monkey mysteriously starts beating its drum on its own. At the same time, everyone watches the chef perform an impressive knife routine. The performance ends in horror when one of the knives slips from his hand. It's so sharp that Annie's head remains in place for a brief moment before rolling across the table. At Annie's funeral, the only thing worse than the awkward sermon from the inexperienced priest is Lois's attempt to comfort her sons. She tells them that tragedies like this happen all the time, that everyone dies eventually, and that the best thing anyone can do is enjoy life while they're still alive. The three of them spend the rest of the day dancing around the house, and Hal says it's the best day of his life. The following day couldn't be more different. A group of girls sets Hal up in the school bathroom and steals his pants just for fun. He returns home upset, only to find the monkey sitting in his bedroom, even though his mother insists she never put it there. Hal begins to suspect that Annie's death wasn't an accident after all. Instead of sharing his concerns, Bill becomes even more controlling. He believes he's the sole heir to their father's belongings and forces Hal to humiliate himself just to be allowed to keep the monkey. The next day, Hal discovers the monkey inside his school backpack. The girls target him again, and this time Bill joins in, helping them dump trash all over him. He comes home filthy and heartbroken, only to find the monkey waiting on his bed as if it had been expecting him. Driven by anger, Hal turns the key once more and loudly wishes that Bill would die. The monkey flashes its familiar grin, raises its right leg, spins the drumstick, and prepares to strike. At that very moment, Bill arrives home as the monkey happily beats its drum. Bill walks into the kitchen and speaks to his mother, but she doesn't answer. He starts shouting until she slowly turns around, revealing blood pouring from several places on her head. Doctors later explain her death as the result of a rare brain aneurysm, but Hal knows the truth and is overwhelmed with guilt. Bill crashes the funeral, calling out for his mother and refusing to accept that she's gone. Their Uncle Chip becomes the boy's guardian. He admits to Hal that neither he nor his wife ever wanted to raise children, but promises to do the best he can, warning that even his best may not be good enough for them. Before moving away, Hal decides to destroy the cursed toy once and for all. He grabs a meat cleaver and chops off one of the monkey's arms. Horrified, he notices what looks like blood coming out of the toy, but he keeps hacking it to pieces anyway. Afterward, he gathers up every piece and throws them away, determined to end the nightmare for good. The twins then move in with their uncle in the town of Casco, Maine. Bill is still traumatized by their mother's death and refuses to take off his jacket, saying he doesn't want to have to wear it again if another funeral happens anytime soon. One of the first nights in the new house, Hal notices a strange light flickering on the balcony. He gets the unsettling feeling that he just saw a pair of glowing eyes outside. The image quickly disappears, but when he returns to the living room, he finds the monkey sitting right in the middle of the floor. Forced to share his fears with his brother, Hal explains how he got rid of the monkey. However, he leaves out one crucial detail. He never tells Bill that he turned the key on the day Lois died. Without knowing that, Bill doesn't fully understand how dangerous the monkey really is and insists on turning the key himself to test Hal's theory. The result is another funeral. Their Uncle Chip is killed after being trampled by a herd of horses while sleeping inside a sleeping bag at a campsite. At that point, the brothers finally accept that the monkey cannot be destroyed, so they decide to throw it into a deep well where no one else can find it or become its next victim. The plan isn't perfect, but it works for the next 25 years. 25 years later, their Aunt Ida, who has spent those years enjoying her hunting hobby, wakes up to the sound of soft circus music. Suspicious, she grabs her gun and heads toward the basement to investigate. As she walks downstairs, the wooden steps collapse beneath her, but she survives the fall. Unfortunately, that's only the beginning. She stands up screaming after her face is impaled on a rack of sharp hooks. Once she painfully removes them one by one, she smells something burning. She leans toward the gas stove to investigate, but one of the burners suddenly ignites, engulfing her face in flames. Disoriented and badly burned, she stumbles outside before crashing into a large for sale sign, which ultimately kills her. By this point, Hal's life has become lonely and empty. The trauma caused by the monkey has kept him from getting close to anyone because he's terrified that everyone he loves will end up dead. He's also distanced himself from Bill, pretending he doesn't miss him. Even his son, Petey, named after the grandfather he never met, is only allowed to see Hal once a year. Petey's mother is now married to Ted Hammer, a famous parenting expert whose books are displayed all over their house. She tells Hal that Ted plans to legally adopt Petey, meaning these yearly visits will soon come to an end. Hal protests, but Ted simply gestures toward his books, acting as though arguing with the world's greatest parenting expert is pointless. Before leaving, Petey's mother encourages Hal to make the most of the little time he has left with his son and create memories that will last forever. Their conversation ends when Petey walks into the room, while the adults struggle to hide their emotions. Meanwhile, Aunt Ida's belongings are being auctioned off, including the monkey. A man named Ricky buys it with plans to resell it, but his mother dislikes the deal because the buyer is a strange man who never leaves his house. Later, in their hotel room, Petey takes advantage of this rare opportunity with his father to finish a school project about his family tree. For Hal, it's the most uncomfortable subject imaginable, so he lies and tells Petey that he's an only child with no brothers. That night, after a horrifying nightmare in which the monkey attacks him, Hal wakes up shaken and turns on the room's ventilation system. At that exact moment, his phone rings from an unknown number. He immediately recognizes Bill's voice, who greets him with a string of insults before explaining that he got Hal's number from the police. Bill tells him about Aunt Ida's bizarre death and insists that Hal come to the house immediately to make sure the monkey isn't sold. Hal reminds him that he's supposed to be spending the week with his son, but Bill refuses to listen and keeps ordering him around. Not wanting to wake Petey, Hal quietly leaves the hotel room and walks into a public area. At that very moment, a woman is preparing to dive into the hotel's swimming pool. The ventilation unit Hal turned on moments earlier begins shaking violently on the rooftop before breaking loose and crashing to the ground, electrocuting the woman as she enters the water. Amid the chaos, Hal barely avoids being hit by another flying object. That's when he finally realizes the monkey has returned. Petey has no idea what's happening as Hal desperately wakes him in the middle of the night and checks them out of the hotel. During the drive, Hal explains that his aunt has died and that he needs to go to her house to take care of a few things. Petey asks to come along, but Hal tries to convince him to stay behind, saying the trip will be depressing. Petey replies that he already knows his stepfather plans to adopt him, and since this could be the last trip he ever takes with his real dad, he wants to spend as much time with him as possible. He then asks what his grandmother would have thought about everything, leaving Hal overwhelmed with guilt as he remembers Lois. That night, Hal suffers another terrifying nightmare. He sees himself as a child again, listening to his mother's advice until she starts talking about death. Suddenly, her head explodes right in front of him. He wakes up in panic and realizes Petey is gone from the room. Terrified, he rushes to find him, and together they continue on to Aunt Ida's house. When they arrive, they meet a real estate agent named Barbara. The first thing she mentions is that she already spoke with Bill Shelburne. Without realizing it, she accidentally reveals to Petey that Hal lied about not having any siblings. Deeply hurt, Petey tries to hide his feelings, saying he'll only be Hal's son for a few more days anyway. Embarrassed, Barbara quickly changes the subject and tells Hal that Aunt Ida's death was only the first in a string of bizarre accidents that have swept through the area over the past week. She explains that one neighbor was sliced apart by his own lawnmower, a golfer was bitten by a snake that crawled out of a hole on the course, and at least one resident of Casco has been dying in a horrific way every single day. Hearing all of this makes Hal even more anxious. While Barbara and Hal are talking, Petey wanders through the house and discovers that Hal and Bill are actually twins. That leaves only one section of the house left to search. Barbara struggles to find the correct key, trying one after another until she reaches the last one. At that exact moment, Hal is overwhelmed by a terrible feeling about the room, but he can't warn her in time. The instant she opens the door, a shotgun falls from inside the room and accidentally fires, striking Barbara. Hal rushes to her side, desperately holding one of her fingers as he fears the worst. The police arrive quickly and advise Hal not to leave town for the time being, which completely ruins his plans to spend time with his son. Later, Bill calls Aunt Ida's house and tells Hal to stay put until he hears more. As soon as the call ends, Hal starts suspecting that his twin brother is planning something. He looks up their last name in the phone book but can't find a single listing. Then he notices something strange, a number registered under the name, Mrs. Monkey. Shocked, he calls it, and hears a pre-recorded message in Bill's voice thanking everyone who helped him and proudly announcing that he has finally gotten his monkey back. Terrified, Hal realizes that Bill is the one responsible for all the chaos. The story then shifts to Bill's side. Still dressed in a funeral suit, he reveals that he always suspected Hal had something to do with their mother's death. Years earlier, he climbed down into the well to retrieve the monkey, but the box was gone. The only thing left behind was the key, which Bill took as a promise that the monkey would eventually return. He spends the rest of his life waiting for another sign until one day he receives a fortune cookie containing a message that reads, "Turn the key and see what happens." By pure coincidence, it happens in 2016, the year of the monkey. From that day forward, Bill begins planning his revenge. He even repairs his old funeral suit because he knows there will be plenty more funerals before he's finished. When Aunt Ida's estate auction is advertised in the newspaper, Bill hires Ricky to recover the monkey from its new owner without telling him the truth. Once Ricky gets it, he turns the key for the first time while saying the exact same words Hal once said when he wished Bill dead. Just like before, the victim ends up being someone completely innocent. Unlike Hal, however, Bill refuses to give up. He's determined to keep trying until he gets the result he wants, even if it costs half the town their lives. One night, Ricky uses Bill's intercom to demand a meeting. He wants to buy the monkey back because he's become attached to it, saying it reminds him of his father. Bill rudely refuses, making Ricky so angry that he goes to retrieve a gun. Meanwhile, Hal and Petey continue dealing with one disaster after another. Every new tragedy makes Hal consider sending Petey back to his mother early or leaving him somewhere safe, but every time he sees how hurt Petey is, he changes his mind. While Petey is in the bathroom, Hal calls Bill and tells him he knows everything. Bill doesn't even bother denying it. Instead, he gives Hal an ultimatum, saying he won't stop turning the monkey's key until Hal brings Petey to him. According to Bill's twisted logic, Lois died after Hal turned the key, so he believes that if Petey turns it this time, his plan will finally work and something terrible will happen to Hal. As horrifying as the idea is, Hal understands the monkey's hidden rule. Whenever the monkey plays its drum, the only person who is safe is the one who turned the key. That means if he agrees to Bill's demand, Petey will at least be protected. When Hal comes out of the bathroom, the argument starts all over again, but a knock at the door interrupts them. Ricky walks in wearing pieces of his late father's police uniform and points a gun at Hal. He forces Hal and Petey to drive to Bill's house, ordering Petey to sneak through the dog door and steal the monkey. With a gun pointed at him, Hal has no choice but to cooperate, but before Petey leaves, he repeatedly warns him never to turn the key on the monkey's back. Petey is finally beginning to understand that the monkey is the reason his father has spent his life isolated from everyone else. Even so, he still thinks the whole thing sounds ridiculous because he has no idea what the monkey is actually capable of. He easily slips through the dog door, but nearly gets hit by an axe in the very first hallway. It turns out to be only one of dozens of deadly traps his deranged uncle has set throughout the house. Fortunately, Petey is clever enough to avoid every one of them. He even trips over a wire that starts a bowling ball rolling toward him, but the mechanism suddenly jams as if it has broken. Petey hears his uncle reciting revenge poems to the monkey and asks if he's okay. Bill admits that he isn't, then asks his nephew to help him relive their childhood game by turning the key. Since no one has ever explained what really happens when the monkey is activated, Petey sees no reason to obey his father's warning. Curious, he slowly turns the key. The moment the monkey smiles and raises its leg, the large tree outside the house begins swaying. One of its branches suddenly snaps under the weight of a massive beehive. As the monkey lowers its drumstick and starts playing, Ricky scratches his head, loses focus, and accidentally fires his gun. The bullet doesn't hit anyone, but it punches a perfect hole through the window that lines up with an opening in the beehive. As soon as the circus tune ends and the monkey stops playing, a single bee flies out, followed by thousands more. The swarm heads straight for Ricky, squeezing through the bullet hole before pouring directly into his mouth. Panicked, he starts firing wildly in every direction, yet Hal somehow escapes the entire ordeal without a single scratch. Bill finally loses his patience. He snatches the monkey away from Petey and, instead of turning the key, grabs its right leg and forces it downward, trying to make the monkey play by brute force. The monkey strikes the drum once, and the effort knocks both Bill and Petey to the floor. When Bill recovers, he sees the monkey sitting upright with its leg raised again. It starts drumming once more, but this time there's no circus music. Instead, it pounds the drum with a strange rhythm that grows faster and faster until it suddenly stops. Bill hears a woman screaming outside, followed by explosions and more terrified cries. Looking out the window, he watches a plane crash into the middle of town. The monkey keeps beating the drum, causing the roof of the house to collapse. A passenger dressed in a wedding gown crashes through the ceiling. It's clear that all of this destruction is punishment for trying to force the monkey to play. By the time Hal makes it into the house, Bill is overwhelmed with regret. He confesses that everything he did was driven by his desire to avenge Lois's death. Hal then admits that he really did turn the key on the day she died, but reminds Bill that they were just children and neither of them meant for any of it to happen. After finally speaking honestly with each other, the brothers reconcile. Hal even invites Bill to join him and Petey on their trip. But at that exact moment, the monkey's drumstick drops one last time without warning. The trap mechanism starts moving again, sending the bowling ball flying straight into Bill's head, killing him instantly. Shocked, Hal and Petey leave the house and drive through the widespread destruction Bill has caused. Along the road, they pass a mysterious figure who looks like one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Meanwhile, the monkey quietly sits in the back seat of the car. From now on, Hal and Petey know they'll have to keep a constant eye on it. Even so, Hal decides not to let fear control his life anymore. He invites his son to dance with him, choosing to focus on living in the present despite knowing that the nightmare may not truly be over. And that's how the movie ends. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.